I am Michael Jackson, an American singer, songwriter, and dancer, known as the King of Pop, for revolutionizing the music industry with my groundbreaking albums and performances. Here are some facts about me. He beat me all the time, even when I didn't deserve it. They tried me like a serial killer. I'm not made for family life. All facts are truth. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. Section 1. He beat me all the time, even when I didn't deserve it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully explain what it was like growing up in my house. It wasn't like other families I saw around me. It wasn't the warm, loving place that people think childhood should be. My father, Joe, had a dream for us, but it wasn't one that he communicated with love. He had a vision of success, and he pushed us relentlessly toward that vision, especially me. It wasn't just about making music or performing. It was about achieving something he thought was the only thing worth living for. The pressure was immense, but more than that, there was the constant fear. I've talked about my childhood in interviews before, and I've said things about my father that make people uncomfortable. But it's the truth, and I can't run away from it. The abuse started early. I was only 5 or 6 years old when my father first made me feel like I wasn't good enough. He would criticize me constantly, telling me I wasn't trying hard enough, that I wasn't good enough, no matter how much I practiced. He wouldn't let up. And when I made mistakes on stage, when I wasn't perfect, he'd call me out in front of everyone. He had this harsh, unrelenting way of pushing me, physically, emotionally, verbally. He'd sometimes hit me, slap me when he thought I wasn't working hard enough or when I didn't meet his expectations. Those moments, those instances when he showed me his anger, left me terrified. It was like there was this constant pressure to be perfect, and no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. There were moments when I would practice for hours, days even, but he would always find something to criticize. It wasn't love. It wasn't support. It was criticism without any positive reinforcement. There was never a moment where I felt I had done enough to make him proud. I didn't know how to please him, and that confusion has followed me through my entire life. And I was just a child, still learning how to navigate the world, yet he was treating me like a grown man, pushing me to my limits. And then there was the emotional side of it. The constant belittling. The comparison to my brothers. He would always tell me that I had to be the best, that I had to be something great, that I had to do it for the family. But in his eyes, it was never about me as a person. It wasn't about who I was or who I could be. It was about what I could give him, what I could give to the family. And when I couldn't meet those expectations, the shame and self-doubt just ate away at me. I felt like I wasn't enough. And the more I tried to make up for it, the more I just felt like I was failing. I didn't understand it at the time, but the emotional and physical abuse left scars that would stay with me for the rest of my life. They say that childhood trauma can shape who you are as an adult, and I believe that. I think that's part of why I've struggled with my own identity, with my sense of self-worth. I didn't know how to love myself because I never had the opportunity to learn that. My father's love was conditional, based on what I could do for him. And when I couldn't do enough, I felt worthless. As I got older, the pressure only increased. I started to carry the weight of those expectations with me everywhere I went. And it wasn't just about the music or performing. It was about the fear of disappointing my father. It was about not knowing what would happen if I wasn't perfect. The trauma of that pressure shaped the way I interacted with the world. I was constantly trying to prove myself, to prove that I was worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of success. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I had ever truly earned it. But there were some things that kept me going. My love for music, for dancing, for performing. Despite everything, I had a passion, a connection to the music that helped me survive those years. Music was my escape, my way of expressing what I couldn't say with words. It was the only place where I felt like I could truly be myself, even if that self was something I wasn't sure I knew. I know people think of me as this global superstar, this symbol of talent, but they don't always see the struggles that come with it. They don't always see the child who was trying to survive in a world where love was conditional, where every mistake was magnified, and where the fear of never being enough seemed to consume me. I wasn't just an entertainer. I was someone who had been shaped by a painful and abusive past, someone who was constantly trying to find a way to heal from the scars of that childhood. And then there was the effect it had on my relationships. Because of my childhood, I had a hard time trusting people, letting them get close. I didn't know how to build relationships where I wasn't constantly afraid of being rejected or criticized. I didn't know how to have the kind of love that felt unconditional, the kind of love that I didn't have to work for. It's a lonely place to be, constantly feeling like you're not enough, constantly questioning your worth. It's easy for people to look at me and think I had everything, but what they don't see is that I was still that same kid, the one trying to survive his father's harsh criticisms and emotional neglect. I still carried that fear, that deep-seated sense of not being good enough. And in many ways, that fear followed me into my adulthood, into my career, and into the way I lived my life. There were moments when I thought I could break free, when I thought I could heal. But the scars of my past were deep, and no matter how many records I sold, no matter how many accolades I received, I still felt like that scared little boy, looking for approval, trying to prove that I was worthy of love. But that wasn't the kind of love I needed. I needed healing, I needed understanding, I needed the unconditional support that I never had as a child. I'm not telling you this for sympathy or to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I think it's important for people to understand that there's always more to a story than what you see on the surface. There's always more to a person than their success, their fame, or their accomplishments. The pain of childhood abuse, of emotional neglect, stays with you long after the physical scars heal. And no matter how much you achieve, it doesn't always make up for the things you didn't get when you needed them the most. Section 2. They tried me like a serial killer. The legal battles, the accusations, they've been a constant shadow over my life, something I never wanted or deserved. It's hard to describe what it's like to go through something like that, especially when the allegations are so painful and so completely false. But it's part of my story, and it's something I can't ignore. The 1993 allegations, followed by the 2005 trial, were moments that shook me to my core, and I carry the emotional weight of them every day. In 1993, when I was accused of child molestation, I didn't know how to deal with it. The media coverage was overwhelming. The accusations, false as they were, spread like wildfire. People started to believe them, and no matter how hard I tried to explain myself, it felt like the world was turning against me. I've always had a love for children, always believed in their innocence and purity. To me, they were not only friends, they were the future, they were the joy of the world. The idea that I could harm them was not only unfathomable, but it also went against everything I believed in. But despite my innocence, I was thrust into a battle that felt like it would never end. The truth is, I've always been someone who wanted to protect children. I've always been drawn to their purity, their honesty. I never had a proper childhood myself, so I wanted to provide them with the kind of love and care that I never got. I opened my home to children, whether it was through the Make-A-Wish Foundation or just inviting them over to Neverland to give them a day of fun, something to remember. It was about creating joy, creating memories, not about anything sinister. But that's not how the world saw it. To them, my actions were suspicious, even though I never did anything but offer love and care. I wanted them to experience something magical because I never had that magic myself as a child. When the 1993 accusations came, it felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had built, was suddenly at risk. The media didn't give me a chance to speak for myself. Instead, they sensationalized the case, made it about something twisted, something unnatural. I couldn't understand why. The pressure was immense, and the toll on my mental and emotional health was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The rumors and the scrutiny made it almost impossible for me to go out in public. I felt like I was drowning. I couldn't escape the whispers, the judgment, the accusations that came with being famous. Every time I went out, I saw people looking at me differently, and I knew it was because of the lies they had been fed. I felt isolated, like I was fighting a battle no one could see, and the more I tried to prove my innocence, the more they seemed determined to tear me down. Despite all of that, I fought back. I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The case was settled out of court in 1994, and while I was able to move on, the damage was already done. My reputation had been tarnished, and it would never be the same again. The public image of me had shifted, and no matter how much I tried to prove my innocence, the media never let go of the story. Then, in 2005, the trial came again. This time, the accusations were more specific. It was even more intense, and the stakes were higher. But again I stood firm. I knew I had nothing to hide, and I was determined to clear my name. The trial lasted for months, and during that time, I was under a microscope. Every aspect of my life was dissected, scrutinized, twisted into something ugly. It wasn't just about the case, it was about me as a person, about destroying my life, my reputation, and everything I stood for. The emotional toll was unimaginable. I was constantly bombarded with questions about my innocence, and the media didn't care about the truth. They cared about selling a story. I can't tell you how much it hurt. To be accused of something so horrific when I knew in my heart that I had done nothing wrong. To have people look at me and question my integrity, my character, my love for children, it was like a knife in the heart. I had spent my whole life dedicated to making the world a better place for children, and to have that love twisted into something dark and ugly was too much to bear. But I had to keep fighting for myself, for my family, and for the truth. When the trial ended, and I was acquitted of all charges, it was a bittersweet victory. Yes, the truth was on my side, but the damage had already been done. The accusations had left a permanent mark on my life, one that I would never be able to fully erase. People still talked about it, still wondered about my innocence, even though the courts had cleared my name. The emotional toll from those years of legal battles and media scrutiny never fully left me. I had fought so hard, but I was left with a broken heart, with a sense that no matter how much I achieved, no matter how many times I proved myself, some people would always doubt me. That was the burden of my fame. What people didn't understand was how deeply these accusations affected me. They didn't see how the pain of being misunderstood, of being falsely accused, wore me down. It took away my peace of mind, my sense of self. The loneliness became unbearable. I had spent so many years trying to do good, trying to help others, and yet, I was still seen as a villain by some. I tried to hide the pain, to keep going, but it was always there, lingering in the background. Every time someone mentioned the allegations, every time a new rumor surfaced, it felt like I was reliving it all over again. The truth is, those battles changed me. They made me more cautious, more guarded. They made it harder for me to trust people. But despite everything, I kept going. I kept doing what I loved. I kept making music, making art, because that's what I was born to do. And I kept loving children, because that was always my mission, my purpose, to give them joy, to give them the childhood I never had. But there's always a price. And for me, that price was a lifetime of doubt, a lifetime of questioning my motives, my innocence. The allegations will always be part of my story, but they don't define me. I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. And I hope that, over time, people can see that too. Section 3. I'm not made for family life. My family life, like many aspects of my existence, was often overshadowed by the weight of my fame. It's hard to describe how difficult it was to try to maintain a personal life under such intense public scrutiny. In many ways, my relationships felt like they were always being watched, always under a microscope. It made everything more complicated. Nothing felt private, nothing felt real. My first marriage to Lisa Marie Presley was one of the most intense experiences of my life, but it was also fraught with difficulty from the start. We were both famous, both under the public's gaze, and that added a layer of strain that I don't think either of us anticipated. There were so many expectations. People wanted to know if our marriage was real, if it was just a publicity stunt. The constant pressure was unbearable at times. We were both young, both trying to figure out how to navigate our relationship while dealing with the weight of our family's legacies and the pressures of fame. I had been married before, and I knew how much work it took, but the scrutiny we faced was unlike anything I had ever experienced. We both struggled with our individual issues. Lisa Marie had her own challenges, and I had mine. Despite the love I had for her, the marriage didn't last. After less than 2 years, we divorced. That period of my life was filled with a sense of loss and confusion. I was still trying to find my own identity amidst all the chaos that surrounded me, and the breakdown of that relationship felt like yet another personal failure. My second marriage to Debbie Rowe was also short-lived, and I don't think either of us expected it to end the way it did. It wasn't an easy decision to marry her, but it was something I felt I had to do at the time. We had 2 children together, and I deeply wanted to be a father. But as with my first marriage, the pressure of my public life seemed to suffocate the relationship. There were many misunderstandings between us, and in the end, it was clear that we were both struggling in our own ways. After the divorce, the situation only became more complicated, and I found myself wrestling with how to maintain a relationship with my children while dealing with the fallout from the divorce. I had always wanted to be a father, to be a good one, but after my marriage to Debbie ended, it felt like I was fighting an uphill battle. I had all the love in the world to give, but sometimes it felt like no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't bridge the gap between my children and me. I remember the challenges of trying to maintain a relationship with them when I wasn't living with them. It was hard to be away from them, to miss so many milestones in their lives, especially when the world seemed to view me as this distant, almost alien figure. My love for my children was always there, but the emotional toll of my personal life took its toll on those bonds. As a parent, I struggled with balancing my role as a father with my status as a celebrity. It was difficult to be involved in my children's lives when there were so many people trying to tell me how I should parent, what I should do, and what was best for my family. I didn't always have the answers, and I didn't always get it right, but I always tried to give them everything I could. I wanted to create a life for them that was as normal as possible, despite the circumstances we were all living under. But it wasn't easy. My children grew up in a world that I didn't grow up in, a world where every move they made was scrutinized, and I was their father in a way that felt more like a performance than a private relationship. The media often portrayed me as a bad father, or they focused on my unconventional parenting style. But the truth is, I loved my children more than anything. I would have done anything to protect them, to make sure they felt loved and safe. I may have made mistakes, and I may not have always been the perfect parent, but I was always there for them in the ways that mattered most. I was there for their birthdays, their school events, their milestones. I wanted to be the dad they needed, even if the world didn't understand what that looked like. It's hard to be married and to be a parent when the whole world is watching. It's hard to know who you can trust, who really cares about you, and who is just looking for a story to sell. My relationships were often clouded by this lack of privacy, by the media's constant interference in the most intimate aspects of my life. I was never able to have a normal family life. I couldn't just take my kids to the park or go out to dinner without it becoming an event for the public to observe. That's not what I wanted for them. I wanted them to have a childhood, a sense of normalcy, but it felt like the whole world was determined to deny them that. After my second divorce, it was especially difficult. I wanted to spend more time with my children, but it was hard to maintain a consistent presence in their lives when I wasn't living with them. I had the love, the desire, and the resources to be a good father, but there were so many obstacles in my way, obstacles that had nothing to do with my parenting abilities and everything to do with the circumstances surrounding my fame. It's a struggle that many parents in the spotlight face, but it's one that I never really got used to. The emotional strain of trying to keep my family together while dealing with the public's perception of me was overwhelming. Through all of this, I never stopped loving my children. That was the one thing that remained constant. They were my greatest joy and my greatest challenge. The world could say what it wanted about me, but no one would ever take away my love from my kids. Despite everything, I remain grateful for the time I had with them, and I hope they know, now and always, that my love for them is unconditional. But the strain on my family life was real. The pressure of my fame, the divorces, the battles over custody, all of it took a toll. I often felt isolated, cut off from the very thing I longed for, a real, connected family life. The relationships I had with Lisa Marie and Debbie, as well as my struggles with parenting, were all deeply influenced by my celebrity, and the emotional toll it took on me and my loved ones was something that I'm still grappling with today. I just wanted to be seen for who I truly was, a father, a man who loved his children, and someone who wanted nothing more than to build a family. But as with so many things in my life, it was a dream that was difficult to realize.